everybody, and welcome to Wager Talk. It's our usual Thursday evening podcast. Marco D'Angelo's here. My name's Dave Cokin. We want to thank Mark Seidel, who handles all the production for us. Scott Spreitzer is not with us in person tonight. He's got some family stuff going on. But Scott will be joining me on a tape portion of the show. We go behind the counter very shortly with Jason Simbal. Marco, we got some good stuff to talk about tonight. Obviously, a full slate of NFL action this weekend. We're going to key on some of those games. And also some bowl analysis. Maybe not specific games, but some good ideas on how to maybe take an approach to the bowl games that will make you money.
Absolutely. And tell our listeners to check out at WagerTalk.com. We did videos this week. We got some games we broke down, had a couple bowl games that we previewed, both of the playoff championship games. And then we did do a specific video just on this, and we're going to talk about some of the different things because it is a different handicap, Dave, going to the bowl games.
Very much so.
Yes, you want to look at statistics, which you do with anything in football or any sport. But the bowl games, you got to look at emotion as well because some of these teams are very happy to be where they're at. In other teams, this was a major disappointment. They had higher aspirations.
Yep, intangibles play a huge role in the postseason, no question about that. We'll get into that, so stick around because plenty of that coming. Best bets as well, plus we'll tell you about some things that are available at WagerTalk.com. But first, Jason Simbal from CG Technology, Scott Spreitzer, and myself discussed the betting action, where it's showing up, where the money's showing up, where's the sharp money, where's the square money. It's our NFL Behind the Counter. And welcome aboard, Jason Simbal. What's going on, Jason? How are you?
Gentlemen, how you doing?
Very good. Follow Jason on Twitter at jsimbal. CG Technology, they put out, I think, got so much stuff available right now to play on. Great casinos, great sportsbook ambiance throughout their locations in the city. And right now, it's a great time of year. We're going to focus on the NFL, which we always do on Thursdays. And might as well begin with the game tonight, Jason, where we've seen extraordinary line movement today. At least I would bill it as extraordinary because I just didn't see it coming. I'm not involved in the game, but I had no clue that the New Orleans-Atlanta game would move like it has today.
It's been pretty crazy that now the Falcons are a solid 2.5-point favorite. Never realized it was going to get to this number. This team was a dog earlier in the week. We took sharp bets on the Falcons pretty much all the way through. And even this morning, they laid 1.5 with the Falcons, which is why it's 2.5. 2 times more money has been bet on Atlanta, but the public does like the Saints here. There's about 1.8 times more tickets on the Saints. It's pretty similar to what we saw on the Monday Nighter when the Falcons played the Seahawks. There was also a big move towards the Falcons for that game.
I was just going to say, if the sharps are on the Falcons and the public's on the Saints, you got a chance there if you got the Saints. The way it's gone since Week 7 of the NFL. Sunday games, Detroit at Tampa Bay. Matthew Stafford upgraded to probable, nursing a hand injury. Any line on this one yet at CGT?
No line yet on this one. Still pretty confusing with the Stafford situation. I'm going to kind of monitor that. I was actually watching the screen earlier, and I didn't see any numbers for this one out there. So I think everybody's kind of being pretty conservative with this one.
I suspect you'll see something up maybe at your location first before the end of the day, now that he's been upgraded to probable. A little easier to make a number. The Bears will take on the Bengals in a game that doesn't mean much, but as far as the NFL is concerned, every game is meaningful because they all draw lots of action. However, I'm suspecting this might be the lowest volume game of the week.
Yeah, it's certainly up there. I think there's one game that we'll get to later that's going to put this one in contention for lowest wagered game of the week. There has been some sharp action on this game. The Bengals minus 6.5. That's why right now it's 6.5 minus 15. We actually were at 6 for a tiny bit with the Bengals, so they definitely laid the 6 right away. The one thing I did notice about this game, which I think you guys will get a kick out of, the ticket count on this game was, a fair amount on the Bengals and 0 on the Chicago Bears.
Nice.
By the way, Joe Mixon, Vontaze Burfict, Adam Jones, they're all still questionable for Cincinnati. Here's one without a line. Tyrod Taylor questionable for Buffalo, their game against the Colts. So Jason will move to Seattle at Jacksonville. The Jags 2.5, 39.5 at home this week. Big win for Seattle over Philly. But you know what? Seattle was outgained by 105 yards in that game. Are you buying the Seahawks? Besides the betting handle, are you buying the Seahawks following that big win?
I'm not sure yet. I want to wait and see what happens with this one. To me, this is not a game I'd be interested in playing. It's definitely a game I'd be very interested in watching because, Russell Wilson's incredible, but, very, very far road trip to play a defense that's really, really good at home. We'll see how that works. I do know that the number now is 2.5. The Jags were minus 3. Now they're 2.5. So far, the early action is on Seattle.
Are the Oakland Raiders going to be a public dog this week? They're facing the Kansas City Chiefs, who are in a complete free fall right now, having lost 6 of their last 7 games. The Raiders got a win last week, and we know that they're usually fairly popular at the betting windows anyway. So with a +4 out there, is this one of those games where you're expecting well, I don't know if it's going to be a flood of Oakland action, but a majority of Oakland action?
I think so, and I also think that people are going to look at Oakland on the money line at +175 and think that they might have a time with that because of how, we've seen the Chiefs lose these games lately. This one opened Chiefs -3, -20, took a sharp bet at -3, moved it to 3.5, and then they laid 3.5 as well, which is why it's 4 now.
Tell you, I'm sitting there and I'm like, before the season, that was my biggest over-under wins play. It was under 9, Kansas City. Thanks to, in part, not only with my own handicapping, but Ed Meyer over at MTI. He had some great numbers on it. They start out 5-0.
You're dead, and now you're a favorite.
Now the favorite. Can you believe that after last week's loss to the Jets? I'm now the favorite to cash that under 9. Vikings 2.5, total 41 at Carolina. CGT opened Minnesota 1.5 in this game. They've been as high as 3 that I've noticed, Jason, but it's come back down a little bit since hitting 3. And you got the Vikings, a covering machine. They might be the healthiest team in the NFL. I was checking Don Best injury list earlier today. There are only 4 players listed on the injury list of the Minnesota Vikings' entire roster.
It really goes to show how injury luck plays such a big part. I think the Falcons were the least injured team in the league last year, and look what happened to them. And this year, the Eagles and the Vikings are 2 of the least injured teams, and look what's going on there, right? You've got guys on both these teams that always get hurt who have made it, knock on wood, made it through so far all of the season. Like you said, this actually has been a real fun game to talk about from a betting perspective because the initial action on the Vikings came in pretty sharp, and that's why the number got pushed up to 3, but they really did love the Panthers +3. We took sharp action coming back +3, which is finally now why the game has settled in at 2.5. So Sharp's willing to lay Vikings -1.5. Sharp's willing to take Panthers +3, but not really much doing with the 2.5. So that certainly seems to be the right number.
Well, it finally happened, folks. I don't know if did you guys get to see the parade?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Browns actually...
Jackson got a vote of confidence.
And the Browns actually covered a spread last week for the Sharp players who back them every single week. And it looks like they're out in force again this week. This number opened 4, I believe. And it has been bet down to mostly 3s right now. Where is it at your place? And is that the case? Are the Sharps firing on the Browns with confidence now after that great spread win last week?
Great confidence. Here we go again. Sharps all over the Browns. What else is new? Number was 3.5. It's down to 3. The public loves Green Bay here, not surprisingly. Ticket count is 4-1 in favor of Green Bay. But the money's on the Browns because those big bets from the Sharps are definitely on Cleveland early.
Funny thing about this team, they've had 3 covers this year. They've scored a grand total of 37 points in those 3 games that they've covered, 12 points per game. So the offense has done nothing in those games they've covered.
They suck. Look, here's the thing, and I actually was doing my NFL work, and I looked at this game. Boy,
this could be it.
This is the spot where the Browns really. They got a shot to win this game, and then I realized, what am I saying?
Yeah, Marco D'Angelo and I
lost my mind. I'm not going to bet this team.
Marco D'Angelo and I, we have a just say no that fits the Cleveland Browns, and it's for me. It's if I like Cleveland, I just simply pass the game. 49ers at Houston. The Texans a 2.5-point home favorite. Last check over San Francisco. Jimmy Garoppolo, 26 of 37 last week. 1 pick, no touchdown passes. Couldn't get the offense in the end zone. But the defense played well. They held Chicago to 147 yards and 14 points. What's going on with this one?
This one was a bit surprising to me because I did watch a good amount of that Bears versus 49ers game, and I know despite no touchdowns, I thought Garoppolo had pretty good control of the entire offense. But this is one of the more sharp plays of the day, and they're betting Houston. From 1.5 all the way up to 2.5, and it's now 2.5 -20. So definitely the tickets here are about even, but because of that sharp play on the Texans, about 3 times more money has come in on them.
That is in some ways the most interesting game of the week to me, because I think the 49ers have some energy coming out of what happened with Garoppolo last week. I mean, they dominated the Bears in that game.
He knew what he was doing in that game. There's no doubt about that.
And it just looked to me like they had life. And this Houston team, they're really just not very good. So I'm not trying to argue against the guys who came in and pounded the Texans today, but I'm personally looking at San Francisco in that game. This is a game I want to watch. This is going to be fun. In fact, you've got a few games now we're going to talk about, but I think this Washington Chargers game is going to be exciting. The Chargers they don't kill teams, so there's always some risk in backing the Chargers. The Redskins are kind of out of it at this point, but they're not really a team that you expect to lay down. Gruden gets them fired up. I think this is going to be a good game.
I think so, too, and I think the Chargers have to win this game. I mean, you look at the Raiders and the Chiefs playing each other, as we talked about, so one of those teams is going to have 7 wins, and the Chargers are going to have to keep pace with one of those teams, whoever it might be, and as a 6-point favorite at home, you figure that they have to win it. The number has come down a bit, though. It was actually been pretty good two-way action in terms of ticket count, but we did take one max bet on the Redskins plus 6.5, which is why the number has moved down to 6.
You know, Dave, we haven't even talked about that game between the two of us, and I had the same feeling as you did. It feels like it's a little bit too steep, that price of 6, and I was looking at the Chargers as I handicapped the NFL earlier this week. You know, they've beaten their 6 wins, the Raiders, the Giants, the Broncos, the Bills, the Cowboys, the Cleveland Browns. They've got a huge clash with Kansas City in 6 days.
Very big
that could decide the top of the division. So, I don't know, laying 6, I kind of agree with that max bet you guys took on the other side in that particular game. Jets are at Denver. The Jets have been a 1-point dog to Denver and a 1-point favorite. Last check, the game is pick 'em at CGT. But, Jason, I got to ask you before we get to this game, the Jets picked up the win number 5 last week. How much does that mean to the books with so many bettors pounding under the preseason wins total? I mean, so much so that this was down to 4 before the season began.
It's huge. In fact, if they can win one more, it would be even bigger. So as you said, the number was 6, and they bet the Jets under in any way they possibly could. In fact, at one point, it was like -4, and you had to lay over $2 to bet the under on the 4. So every single game that they win over 4 was good for us. And if they can keep going, that would be even better. In terms of this game, I kind of shrugged my shoulders, not really sure what to make of it. Back and forth, as you said, -1, now it's pick. Not a ton of action on this one. Like I said before, a pretty tough game for the people to figure out what side they like.
Well, let's see what happens with this game. The Tennessee Titans still in the contention to make the playoffs. The Arizona Cardinals, the reality is they're not. But Arizona can play a little bit at home, and we'll see what happens here. The Titans going in is about a field goal favorite.
Yeah, Titans were -3.5. They're down to -3. But what I had mentioned before about the Bengals and the Bears kind of being a nothing game, this is the one. I mean, I looked at this, and there's way fewer tickets on this game, way fewer money on this game than any other. So I don't really anticipate this being a very big bet game. People really not excited to lay with Tennessee on the road, it seems.
This one's going to be fun whether you're into betting or not. But the Eagles at the Rams, nice matchup. Eagles face the Rams in L.A. The Rams laying 2 at CGT Sportsbook. It's going to be a lot of Philly fans, by the way, at the Coliseum. Listen, home field advantage. They were only, maybe selling half the tickets at the Coliseum for the Rams anyway, even with them winning. And I think there's going to be a ton of Philly fans in the crowd. So it's not going to be that big of a home field advantage this week. The Eagles have stayed on the West Coast after beating Seattle the other night. The Rams are off New Orleans and a divisional win and have Seattle next. Where's the handle on this one?
Yeah, this is a fun game for all those reasons that you mentioned. And, you look at, both teams are coming off the really big games. So, it's not really any advantage there. You figure the home field advantage, you could argue, is about 50-50 because the Eagles didn't travel and they have, almost as many fans. And the game's a pick, so it opened a pick, and that's kind of indicative of why. But we've actually seen some sharp bets on Los Angeles. They laid pick with the Rams, they laid 1 with the Rams, and they even laid 2 with the Rams. And it wasn't until we went to 2.5 that they took buyback with the Eagles. So Rams -2 is where the number is now.
Talking NFL wagering with Jason Simbal from CG Technology. Again, follow Jason on Twitter at jsimbal. I knew this was going to happen as soon as the announcement came down about the coach getting fired and the GM as well, and Manning going back under center. I said, well, here comes the Giants' money. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's a different story entirely. Dallas playing the Giants, and the number keeps on dropping. Is it going to get to 3?
I mean, it might. I mean, this number was slotted in at 6. Eli's going to play now, so it's 4.5, and we definitely took some bets at plus 4.5 on the Giants, which is why right now the Giants are only a 4-point dog. Also, some action here on the total. They're betting the under. It's down to 41. So people figuring the Giants have a shot in a low-scoring game in this one.
Sunday Night Football, the renewal, the second game of this season, Ravens at Steelers. And, we knew Ryan Shazier wasn't going to be coming back to the field anytime soon, but we found out today that he may never play football again after having spinal surgery last night. So bad news there. There's a lot of injuries. There's a suspension to Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going to be out for this game. And then you've got Jimmy Smith, by the way, for Baltimore, the secondary. He's not going to play in this game. That's a huge loss. Last check, Pittsburgh 5.5 at CGT. Jason, the total 43.5.
Yeah, this one was 6.5, but as you mentioned, all of the concerns for Steelers bettors between injuries and suspensions has really gotten them to kind of be a little gun-shy, and there has been some Ravens backers, and the public hasn't really loved jumping on the Steelers so far, which makes sense because all of those injuries and the suspensions and a very emotional week, I'm sure, for the team. So certainly looks like this might be a rare instance where we need the Steelers as a favorite.
I think Dave might want to ask you about some basketball in a minute, but I got to ask you about the Army-Navy game this week. Yep. Army quarterback Ahmad Bradshaw averaging 1 completion per game this season. 12 completions in 11 games. We'll be fair, a little over 1 completion per game. Are you guys going to post an over-under prop on passes thrown and or completed in the Army-Navy game? And by the way, Navy averages a whopping 9 pass attempts per game.
I wonder if our system can take an over-under number of 0. What would happen with that? But I do think that it's certainly going to be a fun game. And look, I'm a little biased here. I grew up about 20 minutes from West Point, and I know a lot of the cadets there, so I'm going to refrain from commentary on this one. But I'll just put it this way. You guys will know who I'm rooting for.
NBA tonight, we've got some matchups to look at, and one is the Lakers and 76ers. Philadelphia off a letdown spot loss. We'll see if they come to play a little harder tonight. The Lakers gave a pretty good fight against Philadelphia at Staples, and we'll see what the Lakers do in the road dog roll tonight.
Yeah, I think that's a fun game because, I think we get some eyeballs on the Ball versus Simmons kind of game there. The number here is 8 now, and it opened 7.5, pretty much 8 everywhere. Also betting the over. It actually opened 220. It's up to 221.5. So favorite and over has been the story of all the bettors' NBA seasons. That's what they've been betting every day, and no different in this one.
What's going on with this Oklahoma City-Brooklyn game being played in New Mexico City? I saw OKC 7.5 last night, down to 6.5 about an hour ago.
You got no Paul George tonight.
Well, no Paul George, but I mean, is it all based on him not playing, or has this been part of money moving in?
Yeah, it's mostly the Paul George situation, and the Nets have been actually somewhat good lately. Really weird what to do with this one, and considering the game, and then all of the altitude issues there. Again, this is another one where we've actually seen more action on the total than the game itself. Again, betting the over. That number's all the way up to 214.5.
The Rockets take on the Jazz. Utah's winning streak coming to an end. It was very close. They were ahead most of the game against Oklahoma City, but they did not get their 7th straight win the other night. However, they've been winning consistently at home. They've got a little revenge on their minds tonight as they host the Rockets, but Houston's a good-sized favorite.
Houston is a good-sized favorite. They opened 5.5 on the road in Utah, and that number's all the way up to 7. And another one where they're betting the favorite and the over. The total here is now up to 209.5. We've even taken a pretty sizable bet on the Rockets money line. So this is certainly going to be the biggest liability of the night from a basketball perspective for the book. We're going to be rooting for Utah.
What are you guys doing with the Iowa State line? Big matchup in the Midwest, a nice rivalry game tonight in college hoops.
Yeah, that's a fun game because, obviously Iowa has been a little underwhelming this year. The game opened at 7, and it went down to 6. That was actually some sharp action on the Hawkeyes, but we did take a pretty big bet on Iowa State, a max bet from a casino player on Iowa State -6, which moved it back up to 6.5. So Iowa State -6.5 is where the line sits now, and that certainly is one of the more intriguing college games of the day.
The Bulls are coming. Lots of Bull props will be up. Look, if you want to go to the sports book, by all means, get down to the book of your choice and have a great time. Enjoy the atmosphere. There's still nothing like it, being in person at the sports book when the games are going on. But for betting purposes, there's just a lot better way to go about it.
Look, as much as you might want to get a half an hour break from your family during the holidays, just save yourself getting yelled at and be able to put those bets in on your phone is certainly the way to go. And it takes about 10 minutes to come and down any of the books, sign up, and you can bet, all these games, all these bowl games, and all the NFL. And I think NFL Sunday is Christmas Eve this year. So
yeah, there you go. Great stuff, Jason. Appreciate it as always, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. You too.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back, everybody, as we continue on this Thursday podcast edition from WagerTalk.com. Marco D'Angelo's here. I'm Dave Cokin. Let's talk some Bulls. And we kind of teased this a little bit before we went to the behind-the-counter portion of the show with looking for intangibles. One of the first things I try and find out is how, and to me, look, the big games, the playoff games are a separate entity unto themselves. The minor bowls are often where the real good money is. And one of the things that I like to look for right off the bat is to get a grasp on how the ticket sales are going for the various schools. it's very often will mirror the intensity or energy level of the team involved. Teams that are having trouble selling tickets often pull kind of no-shows at these minor bowl games.
No question about that, Dave. And some teams travel really well, and that's why they get preferential treatment on some of the bowls as opposed to teams that don't. Another factor, this is an old school one, Dave, is the early bowls used to be more you'd see more dogs covering in the early bowls. And the reason for that is because these are the lesser bowls. So somebody that ends up being a big favorite in one of these lesser bowls, they're not where they wanted to be. They wanted to be somewhere closer to New Year's Day where their aspirations, and instead they're playing, a week before, New Year's in those smaller bowls where the dogs, they're happy to be there. They're motivated, and then you get some competitive games. But then as you get closer to the bigger games, you start to see a little more, to form with the bigger teams, the better teams, and some of the favorites then shift is what I've seen over the years.
I'll give you an example of one team, and I have not made a play on this game yet, so I don't want to steer anybody in that direction necessarily. But we'll get good information on this team too because it's right here in Las Vegas. Oregon taking on Boise State. Boise State will be happy to be here. This is their goal to get to the last. Obviously, they would have liked to have gotten to the New Year's Day Bowl, but they knew fairly long ago that wasn't going to happen. They achieved their other goal, which was to win the Mountain West Conference. And they're kind of the host team here, so they'll be excited. I don't know whether Oregon will be or not. And this ties into what I was talking about earlier. I want to know how Oregon did with ticket sales. Are their fans going to show up for the games? We already know there's some chaos at the program because of Willie Taggart leaving after just 1 year to take the Florida State job. And you just wonder about whether Oregon's going to have a great deal of interest in this. And again, I haven't played it yet, so I'm not suggesting go run out and bet Boise State. But that information will become available, particularly with the game being played here in Las Vegas. We'll get good info and how seriously the teams are lining up for this game. I have a feeling that I might end up on Boise in this game.
Yeah, this is a spot where you bring up another intangible about the coaches because I don't think it's fair. I don't think, and I understand it's because you got to have recruiting. You can't wait that extra month and everything. But you know what? It's not fair to the kids that coaches jump ship, when your season's not over. You should be committed to that school till your season is over. If that season is the final game of the regular season, so be it. But if you got a bowl game, to me, you should have to stay with your team. I just don't think, and I like Scott Frost wants to, coach
whole
his team.
Staff staying, which actually surprised me. I thought they'd be leaving.
In Scott Frost, I do a Nebraska radio show every week, and I mean, for the last 6 weeks, they've just been, hoping and praying they were getting Scott Frost, and it was the worst kept secret in football. But, it's a classy move. And to me, that shows you what kind of guy he is, that he wants to do that for his kids. So I think that's going to be a good motivation for those kids for a good showing. But you talk about this one, Oregon just had all this momentum built. The program had declined the last couple years. That's why they made the coaching change. They got a perfect fit. This team, now they had a little slump in the middle of the season, but that was directly because of the quarterback being hurt. When he came back the last couple of weeks of the season, they were an offensive juggernaut. And, you had to be excited about the program. Now you end up, just like a punch in the gut. Your coach leaves after just being there 1 year. I mean, contracts don't mean anything anymore, apparently. So I got to worry about that. The other thing is, and again, to bring up the Vegas Bowl, this is one. There's a lot of distractions at bowl games.
Oh, no question.
And there's no better distraction than the Las Vegas Strip. Boise plays in the conference here, so they're used to all of the distractions. It's not going to be as much of a distraction for them where, Oregon could possibly, you might always watch for suspensions, right before the game because somebody's always going to do something wrong in these games. And sometimes coaches, it could be a motivation if you kick somebody off the team. I used to swear every year, guys love or hate Lou Holtz. I was a guy that liked him as a coach. I swear he suspended somebody on purpose every year just to get the team's attention. It's like, but you do. And so look at those things as well.
A couple of handicapping tips, and I'm not a blind system player, but I like to incorporate these into my analysis. I'm not going to give you the games. You can have research. You can research this yourself. We got information right at WagerTalk, so you'll be able to find it easily enough. But a couple of angles to look at. Teams that lose their last 2 regular season games and are then favored in their bowl game, they don't do well. Also, and there's one team that fits this year, team that got shut out in their bowl game last season, they usually come to play the next season. And it shouldn't be too tough to figure out who the one team that got shut out last year was, and I'll give you a hint. I think they're kind of pissed off that they're not in the playoffs, okay? Yeah. I'm not saying that that's an automatic to go unload your bankroll on the Ohio State University, but they did get shut out last year. A very embarrassing bowl performance. We know they're unhappy because they feel they should be in the playoffs. Sometimes that can work against a team because their focus won't be there. They'll just be sulking about not getting in. Early indications are not they're not sulking. Yeah. They want to make a statement. I haven't locked into that game yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up on USC. In fact, I'm a little more than sure. I'm probably going to bet it very shortly. I don't want the line's going to get to 7.5. It looks like, and I think I better lay the 7.
The first thing I look at, Dave, whenever I start to handicap the bowls is whenever I sit down and look at the game, I look at both teams, and I look to see if they were in a bowl game last year and see if they won or lost. Because teams that lost the bowl game, generally you would expect, whether it was they just weren't the better team last year, maybe it was a distraction, whatever. Being a second year in the bowl game, you generally want to come back with a better effort. The coaching staff's going to be a little more focused. Last thing that I'll give you that I look at in talking about looking at bowls for last year, so many of the bowls have conference affiliations where the third place team from this conference plays the fourth place team from that conference. Well, these are always consolation bowls. Let's be honest about it. They're not the premier bowls. And if you end up finishing third 2 years in a row in your conference, guess what? You're going to the same bowl. Sometimes I think that is a negative for these kids because where's the reward?
Yep.
We did this, done that. You want to have something new. So I'll look at a team that was at the same bowl last year, and I put that in the negative category.
Yeah, and you'll also find some teams, and they made it to a bowl, but they really kind of had a disappointing season. Then they end up going to a conference location, someplace they've already been for a bowl game. Not real exciting.
Exactly.
These are all handicapping tips that you should input into your analysis. It'll help you win. There's no question about that. Something else that'll help you win, checking out what's happening at WagerTalk.com. I will mention that I've got 5 bowl games up now, including my highest-rated bowl game. I've got a 5% play. It is based very much on some of the intangibles we talked about, but it also fits on the numbers, which is really important to me. On my power ratings, the wrong team is favored in this game, and actually by a decent margin. So I think there's great value in it. That's just one of the 5 bowl games I've got up, and you can purchase them all right now. Get the bowl package. Get all my bowl plays that I post at Wager Talk. How about you, Marco?
Yeah, I haven't put my bowls up yet, but I'll have several bowl plays up. And I want to put out there this weekend, you can save $100 on the bowl package. It's $295 regular price, but if you do it this weekend, the bowls start next Saturday. Yep. You have the Vegas Bowls right here, obviously, and there's a couple other. You can get $195 all of the bowl games from your favorite capper. Check it out at WagerTalk.com.
Strong stuff. We'll take a quick break, and we will switch gears and head to the National Football League, run down some of the games this weekend, get some previews, and a best bet as well.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back as we continue on this Thursday podcast edition of Wager Talk. Marco D'Angelo is here. I'm Dave Cokin. Again, thanks to Mark Seidel for producing our show. Thanks to Scott Spreitzer as well as Jason Simbal from CG Technology, who helped things along with our Behind the Counter segment. We're going to look at some NFL matchups in this spot, and not necessarily giving away picks on all the games, but maybe formulating some opinions. Seahawks and Jaguars are playing. Look, I don't know what the MVP voting will look like, but the most valuable player in the league this year has been Russell Wilson. The Seahawks would be a losing team without Wilson. He's been tremendous.
I mean, you consider everything that they've gone through, from the offensive line problems at the start of the season to the defense being totally decimated. He's put this team on his back, which that's what he does. He's a quarterback that never puts up big numbers. When you look at the game stats, you don't go, wow, 350-yard passing day, 3 touchdowns. He's not that kind of quarterback, but he makes the plays at the time of the game that you need it. And I'll give you a stat on him. Since he's come to Seattle, whenever it's been the month of November and Russell Wilson at quarterback, Seattle's 16-5 straight up. And they're doing it again this year. Everybody had them dead in the water, 6 weeks ago, and here they are.
They always
knocking
get better
on the door.
late.
They get good late, and guess what? They're right behind the Rams. The Rams can't afford to trip up, and guess what? They play the Rams next week in a big game.
That's my biggest worry here, because I kind of like the idea of backing Seattle in this game, but that's a huge look ahead because if they beat the Rams next week, they're probably going to end up winning the division. They'd be 2-0 against the Rams.
Right.
So they'd be in great shape for the tiebreakers. It is a long trip, but Jacksonville. Look, the defense has been rock solid all year long. The offense, from one week to the next, you don't know what's going to happen. It was not good in Arizona. It was pretty good this past weekend against Indianapolis. I'm glad it was because I had a 5% play on the Jaguars.
There
It was
you
my
go.
big game, and it got there. I don't feel as comfortable with them offensively avoiding mistakes.
Oh.
Even though Seattle's got people out on defense, the Seahawks find ways to make plays on defense. And this is where I worry about Bortles.
Well, that's the thing. If this game's tight in the fourth quarter and you've got Russell Wilson and Blake Bortles, who do you want your money on?
Really.
Okay, I mean, Blake Bortles, for most of this season, has been okay. He's been a good game manager. He hasn't had – they run the football well. Jacksonville, they're built as a great prototype. They run the football well. They have a great defense. The only weak link they have defensively is their rush defense, okay? And
Still about 4 yards a carry.
yeah,
So it's not great.
It's not great. It's a little bit over 4. I think they're ranked 28th against the run per attempt. Now, they've been getting better as the season goes on, but Seattle needs to be able to run the football to be effective, to take the pressure off the pass rush that
Wilson's
they have.
going to end up using his legs in this game.
Absolutely.
He's accounting for a ridiculous percentage of their overall yards.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's
That's
never
why-
a good stat when your quarterback's your leading
No.
rusher.
But he's a dynamite football player, no question about that. Jaguars are the favorite in that game. I have a suspicion that Seattle might be a popular side on Sunday. I think this is one where the public might end up backing the dog. And I don't disagree with their logic here because this is the time of year when the Seahawks have a tendency to get it done. The Jaguars are not used to being in this situation.
Oh, absolutely not. And, Dave, we always say that the public bets with the last thing they saw. Yep. What was the last thing they saw? They saw Seattle on Sunday Night Football dismantle. Not dismantle. The game was closer than the 14-point final. But when watching the game, Seattle was never in doubt. Never in doubt to win that game. In Philadelphia, people were starting to try to, paste them right into the NFC slot of the Super Bowl. So I think that you're right that the public's going to jump on Seattle. I'm probably not going to get involved in this one just because of the two things that I said. It is a bad look-ahead spot. Seattle's not the same team on the road that they are at home, no question about that. But you have the intangible. I don't trust Blake Bortles in a close game, and this is a big game.
Derek Carr and the Raiders will be traveling to Kansas City to face the Chiefs. This is a very important game in the clogged AFC West, where the Chiefs have come back to the pack. The division looked like a complete runaway. Print the playoff tickets, get them ready. They're 5-0. Well, now they're 6-6. They've been caught by both the Raiders and the Chargers. The Chiefs are the favorite in this game. I don't know anybody who feels real confident about them. I guess the one good thing that's coming out of last week's game is the offense finally got going to some extent. Alex Smith had a pretty good game. But boy, the defense was awful. The Jets went up and down the field on them. And don't forget, the Jets were down 14-0 in that game. It looked early on like this is going to be, Kansas City's going to snap out of it here. They're going to get back on track. They'll be 7-5, still in control of things in the AFC West. By the end of the day, even the most rose-colored glasses-wearing Kansas City fan has to be really worried about this team.
Dave, if I would have told you before the game last week, Kansas City -4, they're scoring 31 points. Which way do you want to bet it?
How much can I bet?
Yeah. You'd be one of those guys at the end of the freeway ramp with a sign. Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding? Yeah. I wouldn't even be able to afford the sign.
Kansas City, this is just I can't put my finger on it. They were given a lot of problems and flack to, Alex Smith. He doesn't stretch the field, this and that. Well, at the beginning of the year, they were stretching the field because the running game was working so well that whenever they did throw the football, teams were having to come up to try to stop the run, and they were hitting the big plays because they weren't ready for them. And then I don't know. Andy Reid reverts back to the old Andy Reid and goes to his conservative nature, and now the offense got all clogged up. Now, last week, as you said, jump out 14-0. You think everything's good, and now you got a problem with the defense. And you don't want to have the defense being a problem facing the Raiders because this offense is explosive of the Raiders, but they've struggled offensively this year. Coming into the season, we knew the MO of the Raiders. They were going to be poor defensively. They made some improvements, but it wasn't enough to fix the problems that they had defensively. But we knew they had a great offense and that they would outscore teams.
Right.
But they aren't doing that this year. Whether it's a hangover from Carr's injury, I don't know what it is.
Maybe they just weren't as good as we thought they were.
You know, last year was was it the one-hit wonder last year that they broke out?
Could be.
The one thing that sticks out to me in this slide of Kansas City started with the Pittsburgh Steelers game, and if you remember, they had to come back after the Pittsburgh Steelers game in 4 days and play on the road at Oakland. Now, that was a horrible spot, a physical game against Pittsburgh, and then come back in 4 days to play your arch rival with, at the time, that was the season for the
really
Raiders.
Was. Yep.
And if you remember the game, Kansas City led for 60 minutes. Yes, I said 60 minutes because they scored with 2 untimed downs. It was not the first one, but the second one that they got. So how do you like that? You got a money line bet on Kansas City, and you were winning for 60 minutes.
And lose.
That's
not easy to do. We'll see what happens. I mean, the Chiefs are the favorite. I think the Raiders are going to be a popular choice at the betting windows on Sunday, and I have trouble disagreeing with it. I'm not sure I want to take the Raiders in this game, but I can't bet on Kansas City at this point.
It's tough to do. If I find my way to this game, it is going to be on Kansas City, and I'll tell you, here's the one reason. You talked about the log jam at 6-6. As bad as it's been for Kansas City, they control their own destiny.
Yeah, they do.
They have Oakland this week, San Diego next week, then they get a patsy Miami, and then they finish the season with Denver, who is in total free fall. They control their own destiny.
They can win this game. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up 10-6. They need just that one win to get them back in the right direction, but who knows if they're going to get it this weekend against the Raiders. The Vikings, they don't need wins right now because they're playing great football, but they'd like to keep it rolling, and they now have the chance to wrap up the not wrap it up this weekend, obviously, but put themselves in position to get that number 1 seed in the NFC. The Vikings were outstanding last week on the road against Atlanta. Managed the game on offense, didn't make any mistakes. Case Keenum with another good performance. He's not going to remind you of Tom Brady out there, but he's playing good, solid football. The defense is absolutely first rate. They're playing the Carolina Panthers, who, there are times when the Panthers will tease you, but the fact is, and for 2 years running now, they just don't win important games and have been outplayed in most of their important games. I thought they were lucky to get through the Jets 2 weeks ago. Misleading final score there. And then last week, they just got hammered, basically, to me, by a team that was better than they were. I think it's going to be really tough for them. I know the Vikings are not in the greatest scheduling spot coming off a big game and having to go right back on the road. But I don't want to get in their way right now, and I just don't trust the Panthers.
Well, the key point, and you said the scheduling spot, this is going to be their 3rd straight road game.
Yep.
And we talked about it on last week's podcast and even when we did videos. I don't remember an NFL season with so many teams with these 3 in a row on the road. Not only is this 3 in a row on the road, it's 4 of their last 5 games. And that 5-game schedule, they played at Washington, come home and play the Rams, which was a huge game at the time. Then they go on the road, play Detroit on a short week on Thanksgiving Day,
yep.
And then go on the road and play Atlanta. And I'll admit it, I was on Atlanta last week. I thought it was a horrible spot for Minnesota off the big win against Detroit. I know Minnesota, the numbers are just there. They're the complete team. They're playing great defense. They're one of the best defenses in the league. And, Case Keenum, he's not making mistakes.
Right.
And he's playing well. But I mean, how much do you have in the tank? How many weeks can you continue to do this? As good as this defense has been, the only thing I'm going to point out here, they have not faced a quarterback like Cam Newton all season, a quarterback that can run the football. And I think if I'm game planning, I'm making my game plan is going to have a lot of read option in it, and Cam Newton is going to be a big factor in this game with both his arm and his legs. You got to change it up, and I think that's the only chance they have in this one. If you use the old phrase, if you put the gun to my head, I'd be on Carolina.
Here's the game of the week. This is the best game of the schedule this week. The Eagles lost the game finally last week. I thought they made some mistakes. It was a game they actually could have won, but Seattle played a better football game than the Eagles. That fumble the Eagles had down deep in Seattle territory early was really big. They never really recovered from that. They had another drive late in the game when they were still in it, and the quarterback got picked, and that was the end of that. Well, they get a chance to redeem themselves, and they haven't even gone back east. They've been staying on the West Coast now for 2 weeks. This is a very big game against a good Rams team that's made a believer out of me.
It is. And, Dave, there's several games this week. In the Westgate here in Las Vegas is the one book in town that will put up numbers for the NFL games a week in advance.
Right.
You can bet next week's games before this week's games are played. What I like to do is when I like to go back and look at those lines and see how much of an adjustment has been made after just one game, because a lot of times it's such an overreaction. And because Philadelphia lost last week, and we said, even though Seattle's got all of those injuries, that is still one tough place to go in and play.
Sure is.
And it was a Sunday night, rabid crowd. I mean, that crowd's nuts as it is. And you jack it up to a Sunday night volume, it's overwhelming. And then the Rams had the big win against Arizona on the road, which was a bad spot for them. I thought it was a look-ahead spot for them, coming off the big win against the Saints and having this one on deck, and they performed. So what did you have? Philadelphia was a 2.5-point favorite on the look-ahead line. This line is completely swung around to the Rams 2.5. Now, you're going to tell me based off of 1 week that there's a 5-point difference in value in this game? I can't buy that. I know Ertz is questionable for Sunday. Looks like he probably won't play. Even if he's out, he's not worth 5 points.
No.
What do you give for a tight end? A half a point tops?
A couple other things that we should factor in here. The two teams that call Los Angeles home do not have great home field advantages. We saw in Carson a few weeks ago when the Eagles went out there, there were more Eagles fans than Chargers fans.
Yeah.
And from what I gather, the Eagles fans have bought up a lot of tickets for this game at the Coliseum against the Rams. I'm not going to say it's going to be a half-and-half crowd, but Philadelphia is going to be well represented, and I don't think they're really going to feel like a road team on Sunday.
They're not. The other thing, and you hate to take life and put it in there, but we had issues during the college football season with all of the hurricane issues. We've got the wildfires going on in California right now. The LA players, they live there. There's distractions with that as well. I know, at the beginning of the season, there wasn't anybody that would have been talking this week. We would be talking about Philadelphia and the Rams for possibly the number one seed in the NFC.
Thought the Rams would be improved, but didn't imagine anything like this. And the Eagles, I will say, I was very high on coming into the season, and I think I'm going to cash my over wins bet on that. But
you haven't already?
But no, they won't let me cash it in yet. But they've been better than I thought they would be. I didn't think that they would be a team that has really looked like the dominant team in the NFC for much of the season.
They have the difference. What I like in this one, both teams run the football, but Philadelphia is more consistent at it. Gurley is either really good or they have games that they shut him down. And Philadelphia can run the football. And when they're running the football, Carson Wentz just doesn't make mistakes. And it opens everything up for him. Both teams have great defenses, but when it comes down to it, I look at this game and you give me the better running team getting points. The defenses are a toss-up. I'll take the points.
Ravens and Steelers, we talked about some of the intangibles that come into play in these bowl games. You have a major intangible on the Pittsburgh side this week. This is going to be an inspired football team that's going to come out and play for their teammate who's apparently never going to play football again. And thankfully, he's going to be okay and will be able to live a normal life. But he's done playing football. This team's going to come out fired up, and that's the first thing I'm looking at in this game. I know a lot of stuff points to the Ravens as far as how they're playing now. Joe Flacco is clearly playing at a higher level than he was earlier in the season. The offense has opened up some. They've gotten much healthier, although they did lose a key defensive back. Jimmy Smith is a big loss for the Ravens. The Steelers are banged up. There's no question about that. They're not 100%. Marco, I got to tell you, this team's going to come out with they're going to be on a mission in this game, and that is not a team I want to go against.
It's not. There's so much around this game that it's hard. You know me. I love the Steelers, and I know them inside and out. And I go against them as much as I go with them. I'm not, just a homer. But I had this Baltimore game schedule circled prior to last week's stuff happening because it was such a bad spot for Pittsburgh.
I know.
Coming off the Cincinnati
Patriots
game.
are next.
The Patriots, that's the big thing because
that's going to keep me out of the game.
The thing about it is, everybody say, well, they got to keep pace because, they went home field. This game, as far as the records go, means nothing because it's the winner next week that determines it. Pittsburgh could lose this week, beat New England next week. They're tied, but Pittsburgh has the tiebreaker. Same way with New England on Monday night. It's the same situation for them. They could drop the game but win in Pittsburgh, and they're fine. So that's a problem. You saw how physical that game was Monday night. I was sore just watching the game, Dave. It was insane. And, how does Pittsburgh come back on the short week? And then you throw in all of the emotion of what's going on with Ryan Shazier. I don't know what to expect. Your gut reaction is, they're going to play inspired. But the problem is they've now got cluster injuries on the defense. And, a few weeks ago when they lost Joe Hayden, people didn't realize how big of an injury that was to the Steelers because he was the veteran presence that came over from Cleveland, and he never lived up to what was going on in Cleveland because he was at Cleveland. When he came to Pittsburgh, he made a huge difference on the secondary for the Steelers. Because that was going to be the weak link of this team this year, and he solidified that. Now you take Shazier, who is basically the quarterback of the defense, calling the plays and everything. You take him out as well. Harrison's not 100%. He's got an ankle problem. He's listed as questionable. Mitchell's not 100%. He's listed as questionable. And Joe Flacco, as bad as the numbers have been, he's playing better right now. But, boy, when he comes into Pittsburgh, he has an arrogance about him that he plays well. I know he ruined my 50th birthday. I flew back to Pittsburgh a few years back for my 50th birthday. We got tickets right in the end zone, 4th row, and he led the drive at the end of the game, scored the winning touchdown right in front of our faces. So far right in front of our faces, Dave, that me and my wife, Lori, our picture was in the Post-Gazette the next morning. They had the game-winning catch, the guy going up, and you could see all of the crowd, no! And there was our faces. And so, that was my memory of my 50th birthday. Thank you, Joe Flacco. He's had some big games at Heinz Field.
This is going to be a good game. The teams don't like each other. It does matter a lot to the Ravens. This is a very big game.
Oh, it's a big game for them because they've got 3 teams chomping at their bit right behind them at 6-6, 1 game behind them.
The thing that's going to keep me out of it is I just know the Steelers are going to come out. And whether, maybe it could be one of those situations where first half might be, if you like the Steelers, first half might be a better wager because they're going to come out. That's a very good point. They might wear down as the game goes on because of all the injury issues. That's a look at 5 of the games this weekend. We've still got a little more to go. We're going to be right back with our best bet segment next. All right, we are back with best bets for this weekend. We're going to have an NFL game for Marco. I'm going to have a college bowl game that I kind of talked about a little bit, maybe gave you a little hint earlier. Don't forget, 5 college bowl games for me right now, all available at WagerTalk, including my 5%, my highest rated bowl play, which I really like the situation in that game, and it tied in with my math as well. Get any or all of the games, get the bowl package. I think we're going to have another good bowl season. It's generally been a real strong time for me over the seasons, and I like the lineup this year. Marco, you've got some great stuff as well.
I do. Our basketball, Dave's been on a roll, 10-4 to start the season. I go very selective at the beginning of the season. I'm a guy that likes to, see the teams play, get a feel for everybody. But we've been doing very well with the basketball, so I'm very happy with that. And the bowls have always been good to us because it's a different handicap. And as we talked in the earlier segment, I'm a situational guy. I look at stats, but situational stuff really has a big part of my handicapping. And this is a great time of the year to use, those intangibles that you don't use with looking at just stats. So that's why I've done so well in the bowls. I'm going to go, though, Sunday for my best bet, Dave. This is an ugly one. You might have to hold your nose when you go to the window. Wear some sunglasses so nobody recognizes you. But I am going to be betting the Chicago Bears plus 6.5 on Sunday.
Not only you need sunglasses, you need the fake Groucho thing, too, as well.
This is an ugly one. And this is one of those ones, you know how we talk about when we look at lines, and there's just certain numbers that, to me, throw up red flags. People, when a game is under the 3, you're sitting at the 2.5, and people are looking at that home team and are saying, oh, wow, it's less than a field goal. I want to jump on. Well, it's less than a field goal for a reason, and when it's less than a touchdown, sitting at 6.5, how many teasers are the books going to have on Sunday with Cincinnati just to win at home. I'm looking at this one. Cincinnati, how in the world do they pick themselves up off the mat after Monday's football game? First of all, just the physicality of the game, okay? And you're coming back on a short week.
Well, it ended their season, too.
It ended.
They're out of it now.
Right. That was the dream crusher game, basically, for them. The season's done, and you play your guts out, and it's not only that they lost the game, Dave, they blew a 17-point lead at home on Monday Night Football to a national audience. That ends your season. What is left for this team? And I got to say, the only good thing that probably is going to come out of them losing that game on Monday is I think that probably put the final nail in the coffin for Coach Lewis. We've said how many years. How does he keep holding his job
I
there?
don't know. How long is his contract for? Because the Bengals aren't going to do anything if it costs them money.
Yeah. But
So
I know he couldn't have gotten extensions.
I wouldn't think so. If he's got three extra minutes on his contract, he's there for those 3 extra minutes.
And you look at the Bears, and they lost last week to San Francisco. It was a 1-point game. The week before they were on the road, they got drilled by Philadelphia. Don't even in any capacity try to compare Philadelphia and Cincinnati. They're not even close. But you look at the rest of the Bears games, as bad as they've been in the games. They lose by 7 to Green Bay. They lose by 3 to Detroit. They lose on the road at the Saints by 8. They're not getting totally blown out. And if you've got a disinterested team that's flat as a pancake, I got to take the Bears. And you know what? And I'm going to steal something from you with the Pittsburgh game. Split the wager up. Take Bears first half and take Bears for the game, because I think Cincinnati comes out flat.
I'd like to see the Bears open it up a little bit. Take some chances. What do you got to lose?
Well, I know there's a guy on the other side of the switchboard right now that is waiting for Mitch Trubisky to show those North Carolina stats that he had.
I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but you got to let him play at some point.
The Detroit game, he played fantastic.
Yeah, he was good.
And then he comes back against the Philadeldia game, and he was horrid. But it was going against a good, good team and a good defense.
Holy cow! You talk about conservative last week, and then they got no yards in the game at all. But it's a better spot here against Cincinnati. I would agree with that. Mine is going to be a college bowl game, and it's one of the bigger bowl games. And I talked a little bit about it earlier, but I'll make it official now. This is going to be my free bowl play for the postseason. It's the Ohio State game against USC. The Buckeyes favored by 7 points. I think there's some tremendous motivation on the Ohio State side. Obvious, they didn't make the playoffs. They want to prove that they belong. And there's that disgraceful performance last year in their bowl game in the playoffs against Clemson when they just got absolutely embarrassed, 31-0. They're also just flat out better than USC. The Pac-12 there's some good teams in the Pac-12 this year. There are no real standout teams. I think you can make a case Washington's probably the best team in the conference, but USC is in that mix, but none of those teams go into the other 4 major conferences and come away with a conference title. It's just as simple as that.
I can't disagree with you in the fact of last year they got into the bowl thing when they were the team that everybody was screaming about, how did you let Ohio State in? And then they got embarrassed. So now it's just the total opposite. They're the team that got left out. So
you have to prove yourself.
You got to
prove. Because if you lose this game, you've got no argument whatsoever.
Absolutely.
It's as simple as that. You can't. And I know people will say, well, you can't tell because it's the different set of circumstances. If you're Ohio State and you really believe you're a playoff team, you have to go out and prove it and treat this USC game as a playoff game. I'm glad they drew a real big-name opponent. If it had gone the other way and Ohio State had drawn UCF, for instance, I think they might have a real problem. Not that USC is better than UCF,
Right.
but I don't know that Ohio State would get excited about playing Central Florida, even though they're unbeaten. They're going to be excited about playing USC.
And any player that was on the roster last year, they've got to be focused because, like, that's one of my angles. You're looking at a team that lost last year and was, embarrassed, and then throw in your shutout system.
It's a good angle. It's like it goes back a lot of years. It's like 16-10, which isn't spectacular, but it's good. And
if you cash 16 out of every 26 bets you make in your lifetime, we would be sitting on a beach and would have some nice, attractive women feeding us grapes and wine all day.
Wow, that sounds really good. The number on this game, 7. I think there's a good chance it might go through the 7. I think USC is Ohio State's going to end up being. Look, they're one of the most popular teams in the country anyway. We haven't seen the bulk of the bowl action. I think there's going to be money on Ohio State. I think it is a square side, but square sides win too. And I think this one's going to go in the win column for the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's it. We're done. I want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll probably have a full house back in here next week. But meanwhile, thanks to Jason Simbal from CG Technology. Mark Seidel, thank you, sir. For Scott Spreitzer and Marco D'Angelo, I'm Dave Cokin. Have a great winning weekend, and we'll see you next week on Wager Talk.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.